I think that
To
there are
take James
very
Franklin.
few coaches in this country that are just a lock to do an amazing job anywhere they go. And one of them's coaching in the NFL right now, and one of them's at Alabama, and that's probably where he's going to retire. And those are the only two surefire certainties in the sport. We can poke holes in everybody else's resume besides those two guys.
Yeah.
Even Dabo Sweeney, we can say, well, he's never done it anywhere else. Maybe he's done a nice job building the Clemson situation, but could he just pick up and leave and go somewhere else and build Oklahoma State into a national contender? We don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
and of course,
the reason I kind of asked you that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And
I think Dabo Sweeney would probably be.
Go ahead. Keep going.
No, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just going to say, I paused there. I was just going to say that in James Franklin, we have a gold medal mentality in this country. So if someone has not won the championship, then they're considered fill in the blank chokers, or they can't get it done, or whatever. Okay, there's only one national championship each season, and one guy's winning half of them. So there's not going to be very many left. And the other guy that won 3 in the last 12 or 13 years, he's gone. So there's not many national championships to be won. And so I think that James Franklin's done a nice job. I think he's a really good coach who lifted Vandy. He took an opportunity to lift Vandy during a downtime in the SEC Eastern Division, but still, who's going 9-4 at Vandy back-to-back years and going 5-3 in the conference at Vandy? Then he goes to Penn State, and he was handed Bill O'Brien certainly put him on good footing and stabilized that program, but still that they weren't anywhere close to where they are now. So he lifted them from 7-5 type status to major bowl status. You know, they haven't gotten past Ohio State, but he's finished in the top 10 to 15 in the country 2016, 17, 18, 19. And we'll see about this season. So I think he's a very good coach. I think he's one of the 10 or 15 best coaches in the country. But is he an automatic slam dunk winner to take USC to heights that they haven't achieved since Pete Carroll? No, he hasn't done it elsewhere. But I think he's a good hire.
Gotcha. Well, that's part of the reason I was asking, because one of the little bit of your show I was watching, I heard you talking a little bit about Jim Harbaugh and I don't think you were directly, but you were talking about Harbaugh not getting it done in Michigan and about possibly looking for a replacement, possibly time. And I didn't watch the whole show because my heart was hurting too much. I couldn't take it. Just to be honest, I was like, I can't take it. But when I look at James Franklin and I compare Harbaugh, I don't see much of it. I mean, honestly, James Franklin's lost 3 games this year, and two of them they really didn't have business. Well, at least one of them they didn't have any business losing. And people are talking about him going to LSU or USC, and here Harbaugh lost 1 game this year to a Michigan State at home that came off a bye that has a running back that just went off, and also the bad calls on the field. I don't see. Is that just a bias towards Harbaugh? Is that a bias, or is that because you expect Michigan to have a do better than Penn State or hold them to a higher standard?
It's either a Harbaugh bias or it's a recency bias. This is why. Since Harbaugh joined Michigan, and I think he did an exceptional job immediately in 2015 and 16. And then, of course, James Franklin was already at Penn State, and his first big season, his breakthrough was in 2016. That their results have been pretty comparable. Yes, Michigan and Penn State. However, Penn State has beaten Ohio State once. That was a bit of a flukish win. Penn State people would get on me, but they did it. It wasn't like they needed help from an official or anything like that. It was a legitimate win, but they squeaked by. And so James Franklin has done something Jim Harbaugh has not done. He's beaten Ohio State, and he's gone on to a Big Ten championship game and won the Big Ten championship. But I think this is more of a distinction. Jim Harbaugh has routinely, especially, of course, these last 2 years, been blown out, embarrassed by Ohio State. James Franklin has never been embarrassed by Ohio State post 2013. So starting in 2014, even against the national championship Ohio State team in 2014, and his team went 7-6. They took Ohio State to double overtime in that game, a 7-6 Penn State team. And every year since then, they have played Ohio State razor close in many of those games. 2 of those games, they had a 2-score lead in the fourth quarter. And sure, you can jump on James Franklin for blowing the lead, but they also lost by 1 point twice to really good Ohio State teams. That Ohio State team in 2019 killed everyone except Penn State. They have routinely played Ohio State well, including last weekend.
Yeah, I mean, they played a tough game. At least, even after the Illinois game, they lost to Illinois. But here's the thing. Look at who's Ohio State's biggest rivalry in the Big Ten. It's not Penn State.
Sure.
Who do they prepare all year for? I mean, they've admitted that they have drills that they run every practice every week.
So
preparing for who?
Really, you're going to go to that degree?
Well, I'm not. I'm just
Michigan's
saying
performances against Ohio State. Penn State has played.
No, I'm not.
Again, bottom line, I'm just stating
it's
that
it's not comparing apples to apples.
Sure, it is comparing
I'm
apples
not defending.
to apples.
I'm just saying it's not comparing apples to apples.
Oh, this is a comparison of apples to apples, if there ever was one. 2 teams that play in the same division, that play basically the same schedule, have 2 head coaches that have been coaching at those schools for roughly the same period of time. We can compare them. That's a good comparison. It's one of the few in college football that we can just be like, okay, Harbaugh, Franklin. It's comparable, and it's not a blowout. It's not like, oh, one's winning the Big Ten every year and is great, and the other one's awful. It's not like comparing Urban Meyer and Jim Harbaugh. It's comparing Harbaugh and Franklin, and it's a good discussion, but I think Franklin has a decided advantage. He's won a Fiesta Bowl. He's won a Cotton Bowl. He's won 2 major bowl games. He came within a field goal of beating one of the best teams in the country, USC, in a great classic Rose Bowl game. So he's played 3 really good bowl games, New Year's 6 games, and won 2 of them. Harbaugh's played in 2016, 2018, 2 New Year's Day games, and they got embarrassed once. The other one was close, of course, the Florida State game.
Yeah. Well, you make a good point with getting embarrassed by Ohio State. We are tired. I mean, I am tired of watching that. Every Michigan fan is. But I mean, that's that. But Ohio State, they can blow out anybody at any given time. Not to say that. I mean, I understand
apparently,
that,
except Penn State.
But the thing is, if you look at like strength, there's things that you can compare that Harbaugh's gone up against that James Franklin hasn't, because we played Harbaugh every year. Just a quick question: who's the last 7 years? Who's been the strongest team in the West?
Wisconsin.
And we played them every year except for the first year Harbaugh was there.
Okay.
So, and then you add all the other big non-conference teams. We've always played another non-conference Power 5 team. Not that I'm saying that Penn State hasn't, but I wouldn't be sure. But I know they haven't played Wisconsin every year.
So let me ask you this. When Penn State has played Wisconsin, have they performed better against Wisconsin than Michigan has? I'll answer that question for you. Yes, they have.
Well, then this year, but yeah, and, Michigan got blown out by them. 2 years.
Well, they both beat them this year. So.
Yeah, but Michigan had them by far the more dominant performance.
So really, we're going to go with a more dominant performance. They both beat them this year.
Yeah, they both beat them. But
yes.
If we're going to go with the more dominant loss to Ohio State, we have to start looking at it the other way too.
Yeah, but I'm talking about 7 years. I'm not talking about one particular comparison of game to game. Penn State went up there on week 1 and they took care of business and they got the job done. Yes, Michigan was more dominant. They broke open a close game at halftime. What was it, like 13-10 at half, and took care of it, and were a little bit more dominant than Penn State, which came down to the last possession. True, but I'm talking about Penn State outplaying Michigan against Ohio State for 7 years.
Yeah. But here's and I understand that. But here's my counterpoint, is that Michigan has had a tougher schedule than Penn State in that time, and they're winning like the same amount of games.
Well, first of all, they're not winning the same amount of games.
They're about, what are they? They're like both averaging like 3 losses a season.
Penn State's got a better record than Michigan going back to pick your year. And I guarantee Penn State's got a better record. Not by a ton, but they got a better record.
2018, 2016,
so,
2015.
Sure, whatever. Yeah. So
Michigan's averaging 3 losses a season since Harbaugh's been there.
Since 2016, James Franklin has played Wisconsin 3 times. He's 3-0.
Okay.
I'm just pointing out that it's a good discussion. There is a comparison. It's not a joke. It's not like you jumped on here and said, compare Ryan Day and Greg Schiano or something like that. And I laughed and hung up on you. It's a good conversation, but James Franklin has done a better job at Penn State than Jim Harbaugh has done at Michigan. He just has.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it's not as far off.
True. You're right. It's not. No, it's not like ready that far. But I think and that's
the point. And there can be arguments made for Jim Harbaugh, I think, especially when you look at strength of conference or strength of schedule compared to what James Franklin has gone up against. We've not only played Wisconsin, we've almost every year. We played, Florida. We played Notre Dame twice. There's been a lot of this year was both. Washington was not. They got Auburn this year. That was great. Washington ended up being a dud, but generally, I think Michigan's had a stronger schedule, and that was just the kind of the point. That's kind of what I was saying. I think we kind of make it a long discussion out of it.
Okay, so 2-1, 2-2, 2-3. So Michigan is 3-3 since 2016 against Wisconsin, and Penn State's 3-0. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
good stuff.
Okay. Well, yeah, and that's what I was just wondering if maybe you had I was wondering what your take on it was. I can't see realistically James Franklin being the sought after coach and people giving Harbaugh such a hard time
Well,
about everything
you're
he
not
does.
going to be able to
And
find.
to
You're
me,
not
I
going to be
look
able
at
to
them
find 10.
comparable.
You're not going to be able to find 10 or 15 coaches in America that have a better record than James Franklin. Both at Penn State and then considering Vanderbilt. Going 9-4 2 consecutive years at Vanderbilt. Who's ever done that? The answer is no one. Well, thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. You have a good one.
You too.